So today we're taking a look at this piece of gorgeous architecture, the GT730 4 gig. And I almost said that with a straight face. Okay, so what I have in my hands is a Zotac 730 or GT730 4 gig. It's got 4 gig of DDR3 memory, and I might have gotten a little bit excited because I thought when I first ordered this or first started looking at it that it was DDR5. It's not, and I make that correction. It is only DDR3. 4 gig, and I thought, okay, now the 710, as we all know, is a paperweight, and if you can find that in 1 or 2 gig, it's still just gonna be a paperweight. But this had 4, and it was a 730, so I thought maybe there's some hope for it. And one of the things I was looking at doing was putting that in the Dell Optiplex that I got off of Amazon for 150 bucks. I figured, that's a deal. If we can spend a little bit of money, $81. If we can spend a little bit of money to put a low profile card into here, then we can go ahead and make something that's worth it without spending too much money. Now, the Dell is still good. I mean, that's still a great like office type computer or production type computer. It's not going to play, obviously we went back and we figured out it's not going to play AAA titles, but it would be senseless for me to put this straight into that without seeing what this can do in the first place, because I got a feeling this isn't going to do any better in there. So what I did is I went back to our trusty friend, the HP Prebuilt, that had the 4600G in it, the Ryzen 5 4600G. And as you can tell, I'm still working with the 1650 Super that I now took out of, but is still attached to it in some way. But we went ahead and slapped this in. And what we're just gonna say that it was abysmal. And part of the reason why I did this is we were talking before about comparing what it would be like if you're putting a graphics card into this computer. Now, with making some allowances, you can put something like that 1650 that has a power connector, whereas this one doesn't, the 730 does not have, and you figure that would go much easier with the power supply that's in this beast. The problem is the graphics processor that's on that CPU, on the 4600G, is already arguably better than a lot of the lower end stuff with no connector on it or no external power. And we're kind of able to prove that as we went along. So first we're going to look at Shadow of the Tomb Raider, and I did break 10 frames per second, or actually I matched 10 frames per second in 720p. It's barely playable, and it really hurts my feelings to look at it. When we look at Borderlands 3, same type of story. We start out at 7 frames per second and we get all the way up to 11 frames per second. So that was just a little bit better than Shadow of the Tomb Raider. So that's something, right? Still not playable. Dirt 5 had an interesting problem. Not only was it 5 frames per second on all 3 of the 720p, 900p, and 1080p, but it was only allowing me to use 300 meg of the 4 gig of memory that's on the card. I'm not sure why that is. I looked at it several different ways. I stopped it, I reran it, I went back and I looked, and I couldn't find anything that would prohibit that, except for the fact that there's got to be something in the settings that just will not let it recognize anything. Now, it wasn't stressing the card out too much, what makes me think I should be able to at least double that 5 frames per second into something like 10, but I wasn't able to do that because it was stuck on that 300 meg of memory for all 3 resolutions, and all 3 resolutions were identical at 5 frames per second. Looking at Far Cry 5, very much looked like the same thing. We had 7 frames per second to start with. We did get 10 frames in 900p and 13 frames in 720p, so that is still not playable. And then we went ahead and we looked at the Heaven benchmark, which is a whopping 208, and we got 31 frames per second in CSGO. Now, when you have a video card that's giving you 30 frames per second in CSGO, I don't care who you are, you can absolutely not play that very well. So what is my verdict on this? I bought it for $81 on Amazon, okay? At that, it's a questionable deal, and usually for the case of making, say, a YouTube video, it's okay. Would you bother, or should you bother even trying to be persuaded into buying this because it's got 4 gig instead of 2 or even 1? No, Don't do it. And not for the 81. And now I'm even looking where it's back up to $114. If anybody spends $114 on this card, you ought to be slapped about the head repeatedly until you submit to whatever somebody else is going to make you buy next, because that's just no. That just don't swim in the shallow end of the gene pool, folks. Okay, that's all I'm saying. This is the only thing this is good for is making a YouTube video and a paperweight, and probably in that order. So I just want to poke my head in here and show you what I will do next is I will go ahead and benchmark this in the Dell to see if what is in the Dell is any better than this, because it was pretty abysmal. And two of the tests, I couldn't run Shadow of the Tomb Raider, and I couldn't run, I believe it was Dirt 5 at all. So we'll see if I can run either one of those with this card in it, but I'm betting I'm going to get results that are worse than the 7 frames per second than I was getting with this. So tune in for that one. You'll probably want to see that next. I did have a catastrophic issue last night and this morning. All of my benchmarks, all of the spreadsheets, and yes, I have them backed up. I have them in 2 different places. I do not have them on an off-site place. I was kind of in the middle of doing stuff like that. But anyway, when I went to go update from what I was using to my backup, somehow I've lost all of them. So I've got to go back and reconstruct. Thank goodness I've got most of those figures in the separate folders that I use for my YouTube videos, so I can reconstruct most of it. I am going to have to go back and retest some things because there were some things I just did not put in the testing material or online. And so I'll have to go back and do that. But so I'm not sure what the next video is going to look like. I will get that squared away as fast as possible. But well, I should say the next video after testing this in the Dell. I will go ahead and slap this in the Dell and see what it does then, but after that, it's gonna be some work trying to reconstruct all my benchmarks. So I might have to start over, who knows? Anyway, that's all I got for right now. We were just taking a look at the GT730 to find out if it was anything better than what's printed on the side of it. Zotac, nice try at making it 4 instead of 2 or 1 gig, but it really, hey, it stayed cool. It stayed cool. No fan, passive cooler, but it stayed cool. That's all I got, folks. So until the next video, I'll see you later.